One Tuesday morning, I woke up and had absolutely no idea what my purpose was. Had no idea why I should get out of bed, what there was for me to do in that day that would be of any significance or meaning. And I want to share that story with you today. I want to share um, my testimony around one of the times that I had to restart. And if you're a person who's ever been in that place, it is a lonely and it's a dark place, but you can absolutely come out of it. And I learned two big things during that season. So I'm going to share today that story uh, about one of the times that I had to restart. I remember I think it was a Tuesday, and I woke up feeling like, what is the point? I have no meetings to go to. I have no plane to catch. And I was in the process of dealing with an illness. So I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis. And I was about, I want to say, 32. And as a result of those two autoimmune diseases, I did not have the use of my legs. Like I could stand for maybe about 20 minutes before the pain became just overwhelming. And so, as a result of that, I actually was placed on Social Security disability, and I um, lost my job. So, up until then, I had always been, since I graduated from college, I had always been in the corporate field um, and had become a manager by that point. I was managing a team of 17 programmers at that point, and I was used to traveling for work and having my week full of meetings um, and being a mom when I came home. So at that time, I had three young children. They were all in public school. So when I started having symptoms, it was after, I think it was almost like exactly a month after I had gotten my first flu shot. And um, I remember thinking my youngest was, or no, my oldest was 5. So yeah, the other two must have been still in daycare. My oldest was 5, and she was getting ready to go to public school. That's what it was. She was getting ready to go to public school. And I was thinking to myself, she's getting ready to go into school. She's going to be around all of these kids. They have germs, and I can't afford for her to bring stuff home and me to get sick and have to miss work. So my job had a one of those clinics where they give you the flu shot, like you can get it during your lunch period. They'll have it just set up in like the lunchroom or something like that. And so I got my very first flu shot. And I'll spoiler alert, it was my last flu shot. But got the flu shot, and about a month after that, I felt the left side of my face go numb as I was driving to work one day. Well, it was like a tingling sensation, and then it was just like it felt like my face was like drooping and numb, and I couldn't. I was like, "What in the world is that?" And it lasted for maybe like 30 to 45 minutes on my commute in, and then it went away. And then as the days and the weeks progressed, I began to have more symptoms and more symptoms and more symptoms. I remember a lot of pins and needle feelings in my hands and feet, numbness and tingling in my legs, especially like my lower, like in my calves and things. I remember it was really, really hard for me to lift my arm. It like I would just try to lift my arm, and it felt like my arm weighed like 10 pounds. I couldn't lift a mug of tea or anything because it felt so heavy. And then I would have these episodes where I would have a leg or something, a muscle completely like freeze up, and not released for minutes and minutes and minutes on end. I remember one time I was in the bathroom. I think I was getting in the tub or out of the tub, and like my left leg froze, and I almost fell because it wouldn't move. And so these types of things just continued. And so I went to tons of doctors. Um, they were running, I mean, neurologists, rheumatologists. I was now the numbness and the tingling, and that was extremely painful in my legs. And it was so frustrating because it was taking forever to get these appointments with these specialists, forever. And it seemed like it was taking so long to get a diagnosis. They were going to refer me to the Mayo Clinic, and I mean, I was just having all of these problems. And it was so hard because I remember one of the I think he was a neurologist. He was so cold because he wanted me to go on, like, prescription painkillers. And I remember not wanting to get on that medication. I just, because I have heard too many horror stories, and I have a family member who got addicted to them. And I remember him saying to me, well, do you want to walk or not? I mean, just very cold when I expressed my concern about getting addicted to them. And um, I'm doing research online, but you start going down all these rabbit trails. You can't tell up from down. You don't know what to believe, what could be legitimate, what's just making your mind go crazy with things that you may not have, and that it's diagnosing you with. And in that season, throughout all of this, um, I still had three young children. So my days would look like, most days of the week, my mom would have to come over in the morning and help me get the kids to school, because I would wake up in the morning and my hands would be they would be stuck in whatever position I was sleeping in. So they would be so stiff I couldn't move them. So I would have to sleep with my hands like flat and wide open, so that in the morning, I wasn't, from a curled position trying to open them, and it would be so painful. So I would sleep with my hands wide open, and then I would run them under hot water until like my joints and things loosened up. So it's very hard for me to get dressed, buttons, zippers, things like that. I remember when I would try to get out of bed and put my feet on the floor, it felt like the soles of my feet were on fire. It was so painful to walk. It was excruciating pain, like unimaginable. So getting up in the morning was very hard. Um, my husband at the time, my father of my children, he would leave at like, 6:30, 7 a.m. to go to work. And then my mom would come and try to help me get the kids to school. They had to be at school, I think, by 8:30. And then, um, and then it was off to a day of physical therapy and doctor's appointments and follow-up appointments. I remember having so many side effects from the medication. So they put me on one of those biologics like Humira or Enbrel, or, you've probably seen them advertised. And what those drugs do is they suppress your immune system to the point where it can't fight anything. So it's like, I think it was a daily shot. This was a long time ago, so I don't quite remember, but I think it was a daily shot. And I had to learn to give myself a needle in my stomach. And I my immune system was so shot, I had no ability to fight off anything. So I was chronically getting infections. Like my ear piercings became infected, I got nail infections on my nails, constant UTIs. And then, of course, they would give me antibiotics for the infections, and then I would become resistant to the antibiotics, and they'd give me stronger antibiotics, and then I would get yeast infections and women's problems from those types of stronger antibiotics, to the point where I was just becoming more resistant. And then they were giving me, medications for the side effects, and I was like a walking medicine cabinet on top of the Embrel that was, supposed to be trying to put these autoimmune diseases into remission, which my understanding is it's like your body starts fighting itself. It feels like your own blood cells and white. I can't remember all the details now, because obviously you guys can see I'm still not in that condition, so a lot has changed. But your body's fighting itself. So um, I was always nauseous. I had more than one occasion where I was like, I remember one in particular. I was so embarrassed in public. I was going to a physical therapy appointment and they were having me do water therapy. So I was going to this pool, this indoor heated pool, where the therapist would work on um, exercises with me. But you're buoyant in water. So since I had so much muscle heaviness, they had me working out in a pool so that I could um, more easily lift my arms and my legs. So I was headed to my appointment and I just walked in, and in the lobby, and I had taken my medicine before I left home, these pain pills. And what I had started to do, because I was so concerned about them, I had stretched out the time that I was supposed to take them. So if I was supposed to take them every 4 hours, I was going like every 8 hours. And if I was supposed to take one pill every 4 hours, I was taking a half a pill every 8 hours. Like I was really trying to minimize these drugs, because I was, so worried about getting hooked on them. But they would upset my stomach horribly. But I needed to be able to do the exercises in my physical therapy appointment. So I took, the half a pill or whatever. We got there, walked into the lobby, and it just all came up. I was mortified. I was so embarrassed. I threw up all over these people's lobby. And then, of course, they're like, everybody's looking at each other like nobody wants to help me because nobody wants to clean that up. I don't blame them. I am doubled over, sick. I just remember I'm on my hands and knees asking them for paper towels, and I'm trying to clean up after myself, and I'm mortified. I just want to get out of there. And I just remember driving home and feeling like this is my life now. And so that was a typical day when I would have appointments. But then there were days where I didn't have appointments, and those days were actually harder because I didn't even need to get up to get the kids. Other than getting the kids to school, I didn't need to get up for like appointments or anything like that. Those days were harder because I really felt like, what is the point? I have nothing to do, I have nowhere to be, nothing of significance. Because at the time, my and this is what I didn't know, but I started counseling because I was depressed. I felt very lonely. Even when my family was around, I still felt very alone. I remember going through counseling and going to the appointments and feeling like um, I had no purpose. And the counseling helped me to see that part of the reason I was feeling so lost was that I had attached my worth and my identity to my role, to my job. So when I no longer had that job, I no longer had my identity. Because if somebody were to meet me and ask me, "Oh, hey, Shonda, how are you? What do you do?" I mean, my immediate answer was, I am a fill in my title. I am a manager of da 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 da. And I never realized that. I never knew that I had not only attached my identity to my role, but also my worth. So my worth was, and I think it's easy to fall into that because that's where we spend most of our time. We spend more time at work than we do at home. So it's very easy to attach your worth to your productivity and what you do at work. And so even though I had children to care for and a house to care for and a husband, those even weren't, they were my identity, but to a lesser extent. So, I mean, my kids meant the world to me and, my family meant the world to me. But when I lost that job, I remember it was a Tuesday and I felt like I really needed to get out of the house when I woke up and I was just like, okay, I got to get out of this house. So I decided to go. I drove to it's like an indoor farmer's market. And I said, let me try to do a little walking because they told me, the rheumatologist told me exactly when you are in pain and you don't feel like exercising, that's when you need to do it the most. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to try, right? So I'm walking very slowly through this indoor farmer's market, and I remember feeling like I should be in a boardroom somewhere. I should be on a plane somewhere. I should be in a meeting. Like, what am I doing on a random Tuesday walking through the farmer's market at 10 a.m.? And through that season, it got darker. I, my marriage was suffering. I guess it was hard for my husband to deal with. I'm sure it never crossed his mind that he would be with someone so young that was disabled. And I remember just a few of the times he would try to sometimes bring me dinner when he would come home from work, or he would bring me like he would bring me like these fruit bowls because he knew that I couldn't stand on my feet and do a lot of cooking. My mom would help with all that and help me get the kids home from work, or her home from school, and then she would go home and then my husband would come home from work. But then he would also say things like, well, if you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life and there's no cure for any of this, then you might as well be in pain at the office. So that was not helping, um, because I felt like he was minimizing it. And it was so hard because pain is something that you can't see, right? So yes, if somebody's like bent over with excruciating, like, looks on their face, you can see it. But people who deal with chronic pain, and I did have a high tolerance for pain. So a lot of times I was in much more pain than you would be able to tell. And so I guess with him just looking at me, he's like, well, you look like you could sit at a desk and do a job and go make what was a good salary. Um, and I just felt like to him, I was just a meal ticket, a dollar sign. He wanted a bigger house. He wanted, to continue the nice vacations and the nice cars and things like that. And me being on disability was going to interrupt that plan. And so that crushed me. I specifically remember, and I'm going to try not to get choked up because it's been 20 years, but it still hurts. Um, I do remember I was walking into the counseling office and I saw a raven, and I literally felt my heart breaking inside my chest. My heart was broken over my marriage. I really felt like my heart was breaking. And I saw this raven, and I've always loved birds. And this raven, it didn't fly away, and I had to walk very close by it on the sidewalk to get to the office, the counseling office. And I was just amazed that this raven didn't fly away, and I was so close to it. And I just stopped and I stared at this black this black raven, and it was like it could sense my pain. Um, Bits and pieces. specific moments like that. I remember. So anyway, because I'm going to try to pull it together here, not cry on the internet. Um, anyway, continue to see many doctors and um, go to counseling. And in counseling is where I think I learned my two biggest takeaways. One was that I associated my identity and my self-worth with my occupation, my job. And so I had to work with the counselor to figure out how to undo that thinking, how to grieve sort of that woman and the loss of that woman in that life. And I did enjoy my job. I liked my job. And figure out who I really was outside of that, independent of that. And not only independent of that role, but independent of roles, independent of being a mom, being a wife, being a daughter, a sister. Who was I at my core when all of those other things weren't in play? And that's why you hear me talk so much about purpose and role and your reason for being outside of your roles. And so another reason why you always see me outside is because I value that now I can walk. I try to walk 2 miles every day, and I will get to how I've gotten to this point and how I'm doing managing my two autoimmune diseases in just a second. But I want to touch on my second lesson in all of this. And that was that when you're going through tough times, it really helps if you can find ways to not ruminate on your circumstances and not just, let your present circumstance and situation dominate your thoughts all the time. So what I started to do that I and the reason I figured this out was because I started to grow flowers was one thing, but and it really helped my mental. I just felt so much better when I was outside in the sunshine. I think it was like literally I could feel the vitamin D like level rising. But outside of that, what I really want to get to is I started to volunteer, and I would find volunteer opportunities where I didn't have to stand. So I started to do administrative type work at the school and at my church. I would help out doing, paperwork, desk work, work in the office, so I could do it seated, and that really helped. It gave me a sense of purpose because I was helping somebody else, and it took my mind off of my problems. It gave me something else to think about, and that was another really big lesson that I learned, that when I am in times where my problems seem overwhelming, if I can take my mind off of it for some portion of the time by helping others, helping another person, another organization, it does go a long way towards your mental health. And so throughout this journey, those were my two biggest lessons. Um, Finding out who I was outside of my roles and learning to take my mind off of myself and my problems by helping somebody else. So if you're in this season, or you know somebody who's in this season, maybe you could share this video or some of the other videos on my channel about resetting, getting to know yourself, how to figure out what your purpose is. and the difference between, I talk about the difference between self-worth and self-esteem. Those types of things, that inner work I had to do. And then I also had to do something outward. I had to serve and help others. So I didn't just fall into a, oh, woe is me pity party all the time. So, how am I doing today? So, 20 years of living with multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis, a lot has changed. I think I got to about doctor number 11, and that came to me by way of my dental hygienist. I actually went to get my teeth cleaned one day in the middle of all of this when I was on all the medications and everything. And so I was there filling out the form where you have to put down all the medications you're on. And I was there like for forever because I was on so many medications. And the dental hygienist was like, "You're way too young to be on all this medicine." And I said, "I know, but I don't know what else to do. I've been trying to research things on the internet, and I get overwhelmed. I go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole." And she said, "Look, I don't know you, but I am going to trust you with a book. It's written by a doctor who still practices in Florida, and I think he can help you." So that started my journey into naturopathic health and healing. I went to see this naturopathic doctor in Florida. My sister, who worked for Delta at the time, she was like, I have flight, benefits. I'll get you there. She got me there, and he put me on a raw foods diet. And I remember coming home and thinking, okay, wow, this is a lot. It's a big change to how I eat. You can't cook anything, and you can like barely just heat something up because you're trying to give all these living nutrients to your cells and heal your body at the cellular level. And I also had the thought that I needed to immediately stop all my medications. Now, if you know anything about these types of medications, now remember, I was on opioids, I was on pain pills, and I was on like the Enbrel, the biologics, that's the name of that classification of drugs. And then I was on various antibiotics at any given time for all these different infections. Well, the opioids and the biologics, you're not supposed to stop those cold turkey. You're supposed to, under a doctor's supervision, wean off of them because your body is indeed become dependent on them. But I was like, I'm not going to know if this diet is working if I've got all these drugs in my system because they just mask the pain. That's the whole thing with these drugs. They don't ever get to the root cause of the pain. They just mask the signals to your brain so your brain can't tell when you are, in pain. So I decided if I'm going to know if this diet is working, I'm going to have to stop these drugs cold turkey. And when I tell you, now this of course was against the advice of my doctors, but when I tell you, I laid in the bed and rocked back and forth like a drug addict for 3 days while my body was detoxing all of that stuff out of my system. And mind you, remember, I was only taking half of the dose, half of the time, or for a longer period of time. And yet, and I hadn't done it that long. I hadn't been on them that long, and my body became addicted to them that quickly. That's how I'm so scared of stuff like that. I'm just like, no, this is not my life. I can't do it. So anyway, started on the raw foods diet, went and started to see some improvements, not big improvements, but some. And that led to a chain of, I went back to the doctor in Florida a couple of times. And then I was like, okay, I got to find a naturopathic doctor in New Jersey because this is getting to be a lot. And of course, all of this stuff is out of pocket. All of it's out of pocket because these doctors do not take insurance. Found a naturopathic doctor in New Jersey. They, again, were working on fine tuning my diet. They took gluten out, sugar out, soy out, nightshade vegetables out. I pretty much could eat protein and I think all fruits, most vegetables except the nightshades, but sugar, soy, anything processed, um, gluten, like all of that was out. So I have very, very restrictive diet. And I saw I saw a lot of improvements with that. Like I got to the point that I was never forced back onto those medications. And my doctors were livid. They were like, you are going to end up in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. You are causing yourself irre- irreparable. I can't say that word, but damage that can't be repaired. I can't get it out right now. Um, and I was just like, I cannot walk around for the rest. I'm only in my 30s. I can't walk around the rest of my life being in a wheelchair. I mean, being a walking medicine cabinet. So I went rogue and went my own way. Now, that got me to, I would say, 75 or 80%. Like I could feel decent 75 to 80% of the time, but then I would have periods of flare ups where it might be a couple days or a couple of weeks where the symptoms were more on the debilitating side. But I was well enough that I called the Social Security people and I said, "Look, you can keep your money. Um, I am getting better, and I want to work and earn my own money to the best of my ability." Those people were so shocked. I remember the lady on the phone. She was like, "We never get this call because people just keep the check." And I'm like, "Well, you're getting it today." Because again, I was still working on what I did and productivity kind of being tied to my self worth. That's not a mindset that you turn over overnight. And so I wanted to be productive because that made me feel a sense of value. So um, I probably 10, no, maybe like 15 to 17 years, much longer, 15 to 17 years with like 80% of the time I was pretty good, but then I would have stretches of, relapsing. And now at this point, I'm not under a doctor's care, right? Because they're like, well, look, if you're not going to follow our instructions, then I'm talking to regular doctors, not the naturopathic doctors, the regular doctors, then, we're not going to, continue your case. So from time to time, I would go to the naturopathic doctors and continue with them. And they would have me on different supplements here and there. I'm still eating a very restrictive diet. And you would think that I would be like a stick, but for some reason, it did not work out that way. But I ended up on the fast forward, I ended up on the carnivore diet where I saw huge improvements in my inflammation. Like my feet, I remember being on the carnivore diet 1 week, the inflammation and the pain in my feet, because remember I said like it would feel like my feet were on fire. Well, that never 100% went away. And when I was substitute teaching, my feet would be in so much pain. I'd be hobbling out of the school by the end of the day, sometime by the end of second period. So I was still, dealing with things, but doing the carnivore diet, 7 days in, my feet were like instantly healed. Like I could stand with no throbbing pain, without my heels feeling like I was stepping on shards of glass. It was amazing. So I did the carnivore diet for 2 years. I lost 30 pounds on that. And I was like, okay, great. I can do this. I'm used to restrictive diets. I'll just be a carnivore for the rest of my life. And but it's still a huge win because I haven't been on these prescription medications for now, like 15, 17 years. And I'm just handling my symptoms through food and through exercise. So then I started to gain weight on carnivore. And I was like, oh, what is happening? Like after 2 years, I'm like, what is going on? I started to put the weight back on. So recently, the most recent update, so that kind of brings us up to like within the last 18 months. The most recent update is that I saw several videos online about how people were having success on a GLP-1, which is like your Ozempics and Wegovy's and Zepbounds, with they were being very useful with autoimmune disorders because they reduce inflammation. So I started a GLP-1 and I have not had any symptoms, not even like a inconvenient, bad, little annoying symptom. I have been doing so well on the GLP-1. Now, believe it or not, I've been on it a year and a half. I am one that it doesn't affect me with huge amounts of weight loss. Like I think I lost 20 pounds maybe in a year and a half. But like, you see these videos of people losing like 20 pounds a month. Like, no, it's not me. But what it has done, it has reduced my inflammation markers significantly. It did get my A1C down, um, which I think it was like maybe a 5.7, and now it's down to like a 5.5, 5.4, 5.5. So I was sort of like in that pre-diabetes range, and now I'm back into the safe range, and I haven't had any symptoms. No, nothing that related to multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis. So that is how I am able to get out and walk 2 miles a day, and trying to now incorporate strength training 3 times a week. And so that's the update on my health. But the takeaway from this reset in life, it was not a financial reset for me. Oh, my marriage didn't make it, obviously. We did not make it through that crisis, and we ended up divorcing. But yeah, that was 20 years ago. We're we're fine now, but yeah, my marriage was a casualty of that whole situation. But the takeaways, even though it wasn't a financial reset, and it wasn't like a reset, and because so many times you hear people say I'm resetting my life, a lot of times that means financial. It wasn't necessarily so much of that as I was resetting, figuring out who I was, which in my opinion was a lot harder. And that depression that came along with that, and feeling lost, and like I didn't know who I was and what my purpose was, to me that was harder than if I had just needed to figure out money, um, because it was the essence of who I was that was the unknown, not just, how am I going to pay next month's bill. I did have like Social Security disability, and I had some sort of other disability from my prior job. So I was okay financially in that moment, but this reset was me resetting me and knowing who I was, and why God was allowing this in my life, and what was going to, good could come of it. But He's healed me. He has helped me find ways that my body has responded to, and it is a medication of sorts. I know GLP-1 is something that your body naturally produces, but the Wegovy's and Ozempics, they prolong the amount of that hormone in your body, and it has done wonders for me. So my reset, what came out of it? Number one, a miraculous healing. Glory to God for that, that I can get out, and I don't ever take for granted that you can get up and get out of bed and not be in excruciating pain, and that you can walk and that you can function, because I tell you, I took it for granted. So glory to God for healing me, giving me a way to get my life back, and teaching me that I needed to learn who I was, who He created me to be, that He gave me a purpose and intent. And I believe that purpose is to help other women who may be going through the things that I've come through, and to really have people lean into figuring out why you're here, what it is that you're supposed to do while you're here. And then to not focus on your problems when you're in dark times and in dark places, maybe going through a bout of depression. One of the best things you can do is to take your mind off of yourself and off of your problems. Find someone else, something else, organization, that you can help. It will do wonders for your healing. So that is my story of one of my resets. I hope that you were able to get something from it. I hope it blesses somebody, it encourages somebody, that your situation and your circumstances can truly be temporary. Sometimes they're not, or sometimes they're like long term and then they change, but they can change. Situations and circumstances can be temporary. But one thing we know is that God does promise that He will take all things and work them together for your good and His glory. So this was a long one, guys, but I wanted to share with you kind of how I got to where I am and why I want to share the message that I share. And I hope that you use it, remember, and that trouble's not going to last always, and that everything that you go through, there can be good that comes from it. So until next time, guys, study yourself, study the Word of God so that you can see you the way that He sees you. Bye, y'all.